welcome to Legally Speaking with me, Tarun Nangia. It was a very surprising day today in the Supreme Court because a lot of revelations happened during the Baba Ramdev matter, in which the Patanjali group is in dock for making, in a sense, false claims in misleading advertisements, and they have a lot to answer for. But court, namely Justices Hima Kohli, Justice Ehsanuddin Amanullah, were very angry at even unrelated issues because of the Ramdev submitting fake flight tickets to avoid appearance before the Supreme Court. That angered the court. It was not the main issue, but that resulted in more anger. Also, the Supreme Court was fuming today because they said, what about the faceless people who have consumed Patanjali medicines because they feel that they will be cured? And they will not be cured because these claims were not true. So can you do this to the ordinary people of India who actually have faith in the medicines? Of course, the court also was very angry at the state government, namely the Uttarakhand state government, for giving a long rope to Patanjali, Ramdev and Balkrishna. But I think the people best suited to talk on this are the eminent panel that I have today. May I welcome Justice Talwant Singh, illustrious judge of the Delhi High Court, who now is a senior advocate practicing and also an arbitrator. Good to see you. I have with me Vaibhav Kakkad, who's senior partner with Saraf and Partners, one of India's leading law firms. Good to see you, Vaibhav. I have with me Kartik Seth, Advocate Kartik Seth, does an advocate at the Supreme Court of India, the Delhi High Court and other forums. Good to see you, Seth. And at the outset, may I request Justice Talwant Singh that in about 2 minutes, if he could, speak about what happened in court today and also share his insights into why also the court has got so angry with Patanjali, Baba Ramdev and Acharya Balkrishna, who's the MD of the company.
Yeah, Tarun, basically, I think the court's anger was justified on the last date of hearing and even today. In fact, after the last date of hearing, we were expecting that the tempers will cool down this time and some remedial actions may be taken by the contemners. But I think they are committing one perjury or the other if this fact is true that somebody has submitted a false air ticket before Supreme Court. I don't know from whom this type of advice emanated that you can take the Supreme Court for a ride. My own, I remained in trial courts for about 19 years and 4 years in High Court. Even you can't take a learned magistrate for a ride with these type of tricks. Forget about taking the High Courts or the Honorable Supreme Court for a ride. This is not done, if it is to be said clear and loud. I think this is the message which has been conveyed by the Honorable Supreme Court's bench, division bench, and they were quite candid in what they said. I've just gone through the transcripts, what has happened. Although I was also in Supreme Court, but I was before another division bench. I've read the transcripts. They are shocking. If the way this case is going, I think it's an eye-opener for other people who may even in their dreams think of committing a contempt of the Honorable Supreme Court. The concern shown by the court is quite justified. What's about those poor people? And I'll tell you, because we have passed through this corona period, all of us together, the so-called corona medicine called Coronel or something like that, that was not available in the market. People were buying it in black market with the hope that they will be cured of the corona, you can say, disease. And nobody can estimate the damage which has been done to the people of India at large. In US and other countries, there is something called class foods. In India, I think we are yet to start that concept. I think it's the right time that some lawyer may take up the cudgels and go for the class food. It's not only the responsibility of the Indian Medical Association or other association like that to take up these matters. Even I think the public at large who has suffered, I think they are the ones. You remember that asbestos case in USA, and I think there is some case regarding this smoking of cigarettes also. So these are the basically class foods. So this is a perfect example or perfect challenge for my loyal colleagues here, young loyal colleagues, I would rather say, that this challenge has to be taken. this is not the way to, to fool people. This is not the way to treat the court. And I think whatever can go wrong has gone wrong in this case on behalf of the contemners. Yeah.
Point very well taken. I'll go to Vaibhav Kakkad, senior partner from Saraf and Partners. There were two, three things. The Medical Council of India, the pharma companies, the hospital groups. They have time and again come under the firing line of Baba Ramdev. And wild comments have been made against allopathy time and again. Uh, Also is a point of worry because on the one hand, you sell your medicines, which is good. Everybody has a right to sell what they make, but at the cost of then targeting an entire practice of medicine on the area of medicine and then saying, okay, bye. And then it turned out to be a fake or a false misleading claim. So on the one hand, you damage one side of the chain and you yourself are not truthful. Can you give us a bird's eye view of what's happening in Supreme Court and what has the led to this situation today?
Once again, thanks, Tarun, for having me on the show. I couldn't agree more with Justice Talwant Singh's observations. I think to begin with, what we need to really all appreciate is that there is a very clear law of the land, which is the Drug Objectionable Advertisement Remedies Act. And under that statute, it is absolutely manifestly clear that if any product is sold on the promise that it will either mitigate or deal and address a particular disease or an ailment, then it will be squarely hit by that legislation. And there is a schedule to that act which lays down extensive number of ailments. Interestingly, if you see a lot of Patanjali ads, those ads were exactly aimed at telling the public at large that please do not rely on allopathic medicines. Rely on our medicines. They are more likely to be effective. And in fact, allopathic medicines will have side effects and so on and so forth. Now, we all know, Tarun, at a very conceptual level, whenever a new drug is launched in the market, it cannot just be launched at anybody's whims and fancies. There's a detailed regulatory regime under the Drugs and Cosmetics Act. Drugs need to undergo clinical trials. Pharmaceutical companies spend millions of dollars. Several phases of clinical trials are undertaken before a particular drug is launched to the market. And a lot of tests are done to ensure its efficacy. On the other hand, for medicines of this nature, which are premised or based on Ayurvedic or other forms of medicine, literally many of these claims are unsubstantiated. Now, the statute is manifestly clear that such advertisements will very clearly fall foul of the Act. Unfortunately, it's one of those statutes that has not got the kind of enforcement that it ought to have. And obviously, Patanjali has been, coming up with these advertisements, which squarely are covered under the teeth of the law. And today's observations of the Supreme Court are essentially reflective of that mindset that when the law was so clear, one is the aspect about the fact that Patanjali has been doing what they've been doing. If you would have also noticed, Tarun, a large part of the observations today of the Honorable Supreme Court were also to do with the fact that how the government and the licensing authorities have not done their job properly. They ought to have taken necessary action. For years, notices had been, for years, certain practices had been going on. I think, if I'm not wrong, from whatever I can gather from the transcripts of the hearing, that apparently some notice was issued, but I think the response to that notice was essentially along the lines that as they had some protective order from the relevant high court, they sort of said that, since we have a protection from the relevant high court, you cannot proceed to take any further action. And the licensing authority never took really action. Now, the important thing is that if you look at the statute, under the statute, there is no such concept as warning. The authorities are obligated to act if they find a violation. Now, to my mind, if you look at the statute and you look at some of these advertisements, at least in the first brush, it appears that they perhaps may have been a complete flagrant violation of the law. And I'm using the word may because I'm not personally involved in the matter. But definitely it appears that that is what has happened here. In fact, that's the premise on which subsequently an apology has been tendered. It's another matter that the Supreme Court has not found that apology to be a bona fide one because they believe that it's a mere lip service and it's an afterthought once they realize that they're now caught in the ire of the Supreme Court. So I think a lot of these actions are questionable. I think Justice Talwant Singh has raised a very important point, which is essentially that, look, one is the aspect of contempt. Did raise this in your previous show as well, Tarun. One is the aspect of contempt and what will happen to Patanjali. And I think that, we will know very soon on 16th, and what the Honorable Supreme Court decides, that now that they've held them to be guilty of contempt and they're not willing to accept a mere apology, there is an entire framework under the Contempt of Courts Act and what the Supreme Court can do and what it may. But the important aspect is that the licensing authorities now need to be far more cognizant, far more active. There are multiple Ayurvedic companies in this country who are running amok, who are making similar such claims. There, if you pick up the newspaper on, we will find several such advertisements every day. So I think that's one aspect where licensing authorities, Ayush Ministry, ASCI, they will have to be far more vigilant. And the larger issue is that if the government and the courts have found certain advertisements to be misleading in nature, then I think they squarely fall within also the violation of misleading advertisements under the consumer protection law. And that then therefore invokes the jurisdiction of CCPA, as well as the CCPA is the Consumer Central Protection Authority, as well as the consumers, to come together to file claims. Because one is the issue of misleading advertisements, the other is the loss that may have been caused. All those millions of people who may have consumed such medicines and not taken allopathic medicines on the premise that these medicines will cure them, what kind of damage people may have actually incurred for themselves, their family members. Those are aspects of evidence that will now need to be assessed in a certain, and certainly it is worthwhile for consumers to come together to look at these kind of class actions.
Point very well taken, Vaibhav. Thanks for sharing. I'll go to Advocate Karthik Seth. Karthik, you act for a lot of hospital groups. You represent them. You understand what risks do allopathic hospitals or that medicine branch runs, or how they are targeted in case one odd operation goes wrong. Keeping that in mind, what happened in court today, where the court said to Ramdev that we will not accept your affidavit, and also what you have done is willful, deliberate, and repeated violation of our orders. And court also warned them of taking the contempt proceedings lightly. Do you think that there has been a complete lackadaisical approach on the part of Patanjali? One. Second, that they thought that this is like any other normal compoundable offense where you pay a compounding fee and get on and do what you want. Why do you think that things have come to such a pass? The Supreme Court also commented that you're not the first company making Ayurvedic medicines in India to make such a grandstanding issue. The court said that you're not the first. There have been companies in India, there are many legendary companies and old companies that are making. Why are you making it such a big issue with false advertisements and false claims and misleading lakhs of people? Could you give us an analysis of what happened?
Yeah. Thank you, Tarun. And I agree with the sentiments of the complete panel here, and very esteemed panel. Though I understand what has been transpired, I personally feel that there has been a complete breakdown of the strategy of the legal team also, I feel. I don't want to, I know them personally, I don't want to comment anyone specifically, but what has happened overall is that it was not just the flight tickets which irked today. There was an application made for a virtual appearance of Mr. Ramdev, which was done. And the courts did not take it very lightly. The courts like, do you understand what is what we are dealing with? To not understand the mood of the court is the biggest flaw in a lawyer, I believe. And the mood of the court was very clear on the last date when they issued contempt notices and all that they would not, to move an application and say, we will virtually appear because of this and this reason, in my humble submission, was a blunder in itself, which started everything. Otherwise, as Justice Talwant Singh rightly pointed out in the beginning, us as lawyers who are daily, day in and day out in Supreme Court, would not have seen this perpetuating for so long. Okay, whatever has happened, you have come to court once, it can end on the next date. Maybe the court will take your apology and all that. To make applications like these were completely. Now coming to the other aspect where you pointed out that so wherever I've appeared, I mean most of the hospitals that I'm appearing for, the reputed hospitals, they take one act and one rule very seriously when it comes to drugs. One, as Mr. Kakkar rightly pointed out, the Drugs and Magic Remedies Objection and Advertisements Act of 1954. And at the same time, there is one drug rules under the same, which was issued in 1955. Now, Drugs Act, there's a section 3 and section 4 of the Drugs Act, which specifically talks about prohibition of advertisement of certain drugs for treatment of certain diseases and disorders. Section 4 specifically talks about prohibition of misleading advertisements relating to drugs. Now, in this particular case, there has been a violation of both. Now, when we come under drug rules, there is a rule 6, which talks about prohibition of advertisement of drugs for treatment of diseases, etc., which elaborates on 3 and 4. So, whenever we as a hospital have to see a particular medicine, for example, you rightly pointed out one name which comes to my mind in Ayurvedic medicine is also Himalaya company. They do manufacture a lot of Ayurvedic medicines, and they have been in the market for a very long time. But you would not find cases with regard to misleading advertisements against them because of a different reason altogether. They're because of whatever. Now, what has happened is that someone in this case has thought himself to be above the law, and someone in this case is very specifically probably saddled and not only protected by the who's who. And that is what the Supreme Court has come down heavily upon when State of Uttarakhand Senior Counsel, along with another very close friend of mine, were appearing. I took an update after the matter, and she specifically told me that they came down heavily on us as the State of Uttarakhand. And when that happened with regard to State of Uttarakhand, it was to question specifically, how did you do this? During the period when Corona was going on, a medicine was being called as this life savior. And these kind of misleading acts should not have happened. In my humble opinion, eventually on next Tuesday, everyone will know the whole picture. But I genuinely feel that this is the right approach which the courts have taken. And I'll just point out one very humorous take what happened in court today, and I'll hand it over to you back. When Justice Rodgi saw the mood of the court, Mr. Rodgi saw the mood of the court. He said, Your Lordship, let it be listed next week. We will come with answers. Justice Amanullah specifically humorously pointed out that because of your court craft, Mr. Rodgi, you have saved a lot of people. But in this case, don't try. Just after seeing today, you are asking for another date. Even though you are posting it next week, our mood might not change. So please be careful and wary of that. So happen in court.
Thanks for, we are happy when panelists share anecdotes. Thank you, Mr. Seth, for sharing one. I'll go to Justice Talwant Singh. Now, I want to know from you, sir, that there is an old line that we read when we study law. Be you ever so high, the law is above you. Do you think in this case, Ramdev, Patanjali, the people at Patanjali, and Acharya Balkrishna, or Balkrishna was the office holder, the MD of the company, missed it? Because they gave in last hearing also they gave flimsy explanations to court that we kept on giving false advertisements because the court's message was not communicated to the advertising department. You mean the company's advertising? So they say, we knew, but the ad department didn't know. They are telling the court, as if it's a court's job to tell their ad department. So what do you think is happening here?
No, the order was widely reported in the print media. So the advertisement department must have come to know from the print media itself what the order was. No, for any of the person who was present in the court to convey to the so-called advertisement department, one thing. Second thing, what I feel is there has to be some action taken against the publications which were carrying these ads. because they are, I think, right now going scot-free. People, not only newspapers, I think electronic media also. There are channels, who are they're showing it after every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes. Those papers will affect only the people who read those newspapers. But this electronic media thing, it's on TV, it's on those channels and all. Everybody, he may or may not be knowing that particular language. They were seeing those advertisements along with the photos of somebody, who claims to be, the basically inventor of those medicines. Okay, and what degrees these people have, even in Ayurveda. We are not here. I think we are very clear. We are not against Ayurveda. We are
Yes.
not against Unani type of medicine or any other homeopathy or allopathy is not the only this system of medicine. But the way it was projected, that it is one, if we use the Hindi term, Ramban Aushadhi for these, these diseases which are there in the schedule to the Drugs and Magic Remedies Act 1954. The Act specifically prohibits, you can't claim, you can treat them. I think there is no provision for treating, but you can't claim that this is the last word as far as the so and so remedy is concerned. So, in my own view, I think the panelists may agree with me. It's not only Patanjali, but the publications or the channels which have promoted it. They are part and parcel of the entire, scheme by which innocent people were taken for a ride.
Point well taken. I'll go to Vaibhav Kakkad, senior partner, Seraphin Partners. Mr. Kakkad, two things. You happen to work with a lot of pharma companies or hospitals in your line of work. I remember having a discussion with you where you apprised me of the fact that, Tarun, before any medicine is launched, sometimes even hundreds of crores are spent while in trials and research for the final tablet to be out in the market. It's not that you make something and make claims and people get cured. So on the one side is the test where research and trials and human trials have to be done before it's launched. On the other side, we saw the Medical Council of India moving against Patanjali, where without any trial, without any published report, they claim to have cured corona, or their medicine is effective, or they have completely rubbished COVID vaccines as a method of preventing COVID. Do you think the court's message is to all and sundry in the alternative medicine or the Ayurveda other sector rather than just Patanjali? The courts are coming down on all, basically anybody who attempts to do quackery in the name of alternative medicine or Ayurveda.
Oh, absolutely, Tarun. I think couldn't agree more with your proposition. The court is definitely seeking to make an example out of Patanjali and what they have done. Let's not forget, this is a company with a market cap of nearly 60,000 crores with a revenue of almost 30,000 crores. And they're clearly a market leader. I mean, I think with the celebrity status of Baba Ramdev and a little bit of spirituality, and you add all those elements, clearly Patanjali has been doing rather quite well. Like I said, I don't think, this would be typically a first year law student's delight to, be appearing from a prosecution side in a matter which is reasonably open and shut. And I think these guys realize that, and therefore they accept their mistake, and therefore they're willing to now tender an apology. But if life was that simple. The reality is that there is a framework of consequences that the Drug and Magical Remedies Act provides for. Unfortunately, if you look at the consequences under that, they're not that severe as they ought to be. Ultimately, in both statutes, there is under the Contempt of Courts Act also, there is a concept of 6 months imprisonment or fine. Similarly, under the Drugs and Magic Remedies Act as well, there is a concept of imprisonment or fine. But like I said, I think this is too little. Ultimately, whatever happens will just on 16th, and whenever there's a final decision on this matter, this will be, to my mind, very little in the context of the larger issue that the court has raised in terms of the loss of opportunity and loss of a life for common man, who may have actually foregone allopathic medicines and foregone at the cost of allopathic medicines and tried consuming these medicines. If you remember when the vaccines were being put out, we were all waiting with bated breath. There's almost impatience with public at large when the vaccine will be launched. But if certain vaccines needed certain trials, certain phases to go through, so be it. And despite pressures from the government, the drug licensing authorities did not buckle down. And they said that, no, we will have to wait for the outcome of those trials before we actually, and I think apart from lifeline workers, nobody else was given those vaccinations until those trials were concluded. That similar level of scrutiny is unfortunately not feasible for Ayurvedic medicines and other forms of medicines. I think now time is ripe that either they come up with some sort of a scrutinizing framework under law for similar such medicines which claim to have similar such effect, or if you cannot have a scrutinizing framework, then at least have a far stronger enforcement framework. But ultimately, Tarun, let's remember one thing. A 50,000 crore market cap company ain't going to get damaged simply because there is a contempt of court against a senior manager or a director. Corporate behavior only changes when you make corporates pay for it, and you make them pay for it in a big way. So as Justice Talwant Singh hinted right at the very beginning, to my mind, ultimately we will need to see more class action, more claims being made for losses that may have been undertaken. The problem with
the court threatened to charge them 1 crore per flawless claim made, which is peanuts when you say 60,000 crores, but that is what happened in the last year.
Correct. Absolutely. I think the more you make corporates pay for their bad behavior, the more you will be able to correct their bad behavior. And I think that needs to be a mindset change. But definitely, I think the Supreme Court's made its position very clear that do not take this law lightly, or for that matter, do not believe that anybody can be above the above the requirements of what the law.
Point well taken. I'll go to Advocate Karthik. Said two things, Karthik. One, here is as Vaibhav now pointed out, a 60,000 crore market cap group or a very large group. They are making, they are claiming to cure you by just eating whatever they sell. On the other hand, in the hospital where doctors get virtually roughed up if an operation goes wrong. So there actually for working, you can get beaten up. And here you're completely bypassing the whole system. Have our medicine, person dies, there is no way he's going to go and claim that I didn't take allopathy and I have suffered. And we are talking of India where education levels are not that good, or awareness is also not that good. And then on the basis of such gullible people, you're creating large number of sales. As Justice Talwant Singh pointed out about Coronil. In fact, if I am not wrong, with this medicine, even the educated classes and the affluent people were buying that medicine and asking for it. And it was being sold in black, or so it is said. Given all this background, do you think that the road for Patanjali and Ramdev looks tough ahead than easy?
So I agree to Mr. Kakkar to an extent when he says that just because the contempt is there, the company will not fall per se. Definitely, it will damage the reputation of the company. Definitely that there will be people, especially of the educated class, who will distance themselves from the products to an extent. But at the same time, I would also say that one of the reasons which I personally feel that Patanjali has grown to this extent is because Baba Ramdev was known as a person who used to profess yoga. And the number of yoga followers in the country have increased in the last, and this is what my personal experience is, has increased substantially over a period of time. Now, to profess yoga is one thing, to do yoga is one thing, and to run a business is another thing altogether. To run such a huge business which you yourself would not have thought of it will become so big is another thing altogether. So in my opinion, that definitely a tough road ahead for them, but that their markets will completely crash or something, I don't think that, firstly. And secondly, with Justice Talwant Singh pointed out in the beginning of this particular part, when he said that all those media outlets, they should also be done. In fact, to just point that out, Section 3 specifically talks about it. Section 3
Yeah.
that and no person shall take any part in the publication. So that is actually covered by Section 3, where it says that any person who's taking part in this publication also, or helping them, it's any kind of abatement of this particular crime, is also equally responsible, because this is a very heinous crime. And then I'll come to that particular point which you made, that now the doctors will get hit, but these people who are actually selling the medicines will go away. Thankfully, the government has thought about it now, and recently an act has come for the protection of the medical practitioners, and which is as severe as it can get. So anyone who gets angry or tries to browbeat even a doctor can get put behind bars for 7 years, up to 7 years. I mean, so those things, thankfully, that protection is coming into place. But I'll just point out with regard to what has happened in this particular case, and I'll just take 30 more seconds on that. I personally feel that it is more about the attitude and an ego of a person which has brought him down, because of the majoritarian factors involved, where he feels that was at this point of time, I am supported by XYZ and no one can touch me. And that is where you pointed out someone thinking of above the law, where these kinds of answers are coming into picture, where a brief is given. See, we are at the end of the day clients' lawyers. So whatever brief is given by us by the client, we have to attend to that. We may give our advice, we may give our suggestions, but at the end of the day, we have to follow what is exactly the mood of the client. So in my opinion here, more than, the team per se led by Mr. Rodgi cannot give advices like how it's being transpired in court, is what my personal opinion is. And definitely on 16th April, I believe, in my personal opinion, this matter will attain a quietus. This is my personal opinion, but let's see what happens.
Point well taken. Take one final comment. We are out of time with Justice Talwant Singh. Do you think a message has been now sent across to all of these Ayurveda and other companies who are not into research trials, and there are no published reports on their medicines, that don't take the law lightly, don't, in a sense, take a public for a ride in the guise of Ayurveda?
Basically, I think the court's message has been loud and clear. It's not only the Patanjali, I think it's the larger ramifications which we have to see. It's not only you can say the companies which are in drug sector. There are other companies also who are making false claims regarding their products. I think now everybody has to take it seriously, especially the legal teams of these big companies. I think they are the ones whose advice has to be taken seriously by the so-called people in control of these companies. And I hope that the message which has been conveyed now by the Honorable Supreme Court, these decision makers of these companies will become a bit more serious, and they dare not take the court for granted.
Point very well taken.
Just one quick closing remark. I think Supreme Court today has also pulled up the licensing authorities in a big way. I think this will pave way to is, I think, licensing authorities across the country will now need to be far more vigilant and take necessary action where they deem appropriate on a much faster war footing than they have thus far.
In fact, they have used the word, these were exact words which I heard in court, we will rip you apart to the Uttarakhand licensing agency. These were the words. So
I think somebody from the authority said we will lodge the FIR today. After so many years together, they were in deep slumber. Now, just today, they have woken up.
Point well taken, but I think this is one of the few cases that the whole allopathic medical fraternity, Medical Council of India, hospital groups, pharma companies are watching closely, because I think they have been silent spectators that over the past 7-10 years, on basis of claims that allopathy is bad and this practice is good, some person has made a business of thousands of crores. Finally, there is some sort of a closure for these companies, because they were not able to protest, not able to say anything, despite knowing that a lot of claims may, trying to keep people away from hospitals may indeed not be good for their interest. So I think, but let's see how this case ends, and we will follow this on the 16th of April when the next date. And of course, there will be some sort of a message from the Supreme Court, 100%, I think, in this. But anyways, I would like to thank Justice Talwant Singh, Web of Kakkad, senior partner with Saraf and Partners, and Advocate Karthik Seth from Chambers of Karthik Seth. Appreciate your joining us on this important issue because medicine involves all of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.